get started, first thing I want to do is introduce myself. I'm Dave Scott. I work as a livestock specialist for the National Center for Appropriate Technology. We'll just call it NCAT from here on out. It's a private nonprofit, and we are dedicated to helping farmers have a better bottom line. And so one of the ways that we do that is we have low input type farming, so you have lesser expenses, and we try to keep our production up, and so your bottom line improves. I'm also a farmer. We have sheep in the Whitehall area, and we have about 200 ewes. And I might as well mention this right now. We have them on 32 acres of irrigated pasture, and so we are a dead ringer for parasites. That's how we got in the parasite business, is because of the stocking density that we run. And so a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today comes from universities and research, but equally, there's a lot what I'm going to talk about today comes from our experiences with sheep on the ground, and also others' experience, other farmers. So we're going to make this a collection today. Okay, so what we're going to talk today is called IPM, or Integrated Parasite Management. And I just put some slides here of kind of key components of it. First of all, we have to have lambs, right? You got to have ewes, or you're not going to have a barber pole problem. This is our place. This is what we run, and this is the stocking density that we run it at. And you can see how we're setting ourselves up for parasites. We have a lot of sheep on a small amount. We move every day, so we have about 6 or 7 tenths of an acre, and we have 450 to 500 sheep on that 6 or 7 tenths of an acre. So we are the candidates for Barber Pole Worm, and it came within about 2 or 3 years after we started. It got us. This here is what the Barber Pole Worm looks like under very low magnification. You can almost see these worms, but not quite with your own eye. And this is the star of the show right here, the Haemonchus card. And that's what we're going to be, one of the things we're going to be concentrating on today, because with that card, it gives you a lot of power. Okay, before we go any further, I just wanted to tell you some resources that you all can use. The first one, since I work for NCAT, and NCAT has a program called ATTRA. So all you got to remember is ATTRA. And we have about 400 publications on all kinds of things related to agriculture. There's probably 60 of them or so that are related directly to sheep, from grazing to diseases to all kinds of stuff. So you just got to Google ATTRA and it'll come up, and then you can find your way. There's also lots of videos. There's about 60 videos that we have, and some online tutorials, and 99% of this stuff is all free downloads. So use it. So these are the names of the tip sheets. Frequently asked questions. That would be my go-to one if I had a question, because chances are your question might be in this tip sheet. Okay. We're going to talk about fecal egg counts and what role they play, and also the big star of the show, Haemonchus scoring. Tip sheet devoted to that. We're also going to talk a lot about grazing to control. That is a very important topic, because that's kind of the sustainable topic. You know, you can use dewormers, but sooner or later it's inevitable that they're going to quit you. So if you get on a program right away of grazing to control the parasite so you don't ingest it in the first place, that's a long-range answer to the problems. And then also is simple genetic strategies. That's another sustainable option. Okay. Okay, the second resource that's really important is our state sheep extension agency. Okay, county extension, and we don't have a state sheep specialist yet, but we're going to get one soon, hopefully, and they are a very good resource. You know, Patrick, Amy, you guys go to them with your questions. You know, they can find out answers for you too. You know, so we all know how to work our extension agents, and sometimes we work them to death, but they're a very good resource. Okay. All right, the third resource we have is one you may not be familiar with. It's called the American Consortium for Small Ruminant Parasite Control. Their website is wormx.info. They've got a ton of information on that website. In fact, this PowerPoint presentation I adapted from their main presentation on Integrated Parasite Management. Okay, so I just said that, all right? I'll just call them the consortium from here on in. Okay, yeah. Okay, so before we go any further, I want to really emphasize what you guys probably already know, is that sheep have a great potential to make money. It's very possible to make $1,000 per acre over and above out-of-pocket costs. But you have to have a couple of things. One, you have to have sheep that will give you a 200% lamb crop or close to it. And you have to put a lot of sheep on a small amount of acres, or your stocking density every day when you move, or every 2 days, or whatever it is. You have to have a lot of sheep on a given amount of acres to get your income per acre up. Okay? And so it's very possible. We haven't done it yet, but we're aiming for this $1,000 over our out-of-pocket cost per acre. Okay, so if you've got a ewe that weighs 150 pounds, say, after 100 days of grazing, you can come close to weaning 2 70-pound lambs. She's got twins. Okay, that's 140 pounds. She only weighs 150. And cattle. Think about cattle, what they can do. You got a 1,200-pound cow. In 205 days, if she's doing good, she'll wean, a 600-pound calf. So therein lies the huge potential of sheep. But there is a few roadblocks. Predation, right? We all know about predation. Coyotes, grizzlies, wolves, they're all against us, okay? We're not going to talk about predation today, but we are going to focus on the other big roadblock to successfully running sheep, and that's parasites. Okay, so you will notice that some of the background of my slides here is different, and these slides I've taken directly from the consortium's kind of regular canned presentation. Okay, so I'll be using a lot of their slides. So internal parasites in sheep are a big problem. We're going to focus on the Barber Pole Worm or Haemonchus contortus today because probably about 90% of the internal parasites in sheep and goats in the United States today is the Barber Pole Worm. So we're not going to worry about all the others. We're going to focus on the Barber Pole Worm because chances are, if you've got a parasite problem, it's going to be the Barber Pole Worm. So what we want to talk about is how we get ourselves into trouble. And it's really important to kind of set the stage that way, put things in context. Marie says she's never had a problem with Barber Pole Worm. I say I've had lots of problems, so what's the difference there? How come there is a difference? And the difference is how we graze. First of all, if you never graze, if you always feedlot your animals on hay and grain, you never will have a problem with Barber Pole Worm because it requires grass to be in the life cycle of things. Secondly, we can have our pasture out there and we continuously graze. That means we put our sheep on the pasture in May when the grass is growing and we just leave them out there. We never move them or rotate, which is fine, until we get out of grass. And that might be the next month or it might be September, okay? We can do that. We can do that with a few sheep, a very low stocking density, and we probably will never, or hard to say never, we probably won't run into too much of a problem with Barber Pole Worm because we don't have the amount of sheep out there that are contributing eggs, okay? Or we could continuously graze with a higher sheep density, and we might run into problems into it. And if you're just starting and you have a new pasture that's never seen sheep before, you'll get through your first or your second year and you go, man, I've got this problem beat. I don't have any parasites. Well, just wait till the 3rd, 4th, and 5th year. They're going to show up. And where they come from, nobody knows, but they're going to show up. Okay? All right, let's go to the next one, please. Okay, so this is the beast. This is what he looks like in the under the microscope. You see, he's got these 2 little big old pincher mouths there, and he uses those to latch on to the lining of the abomasum. It's the last stomach of the sheep, the 4th stomach, and he sticks on there really good, and he doesn't let go, and he sucks blood. This is how it looks like, the female worm. It's called the Barber Pole Worm because it looks just like an old-fashioned barber pole sign. Okay, so these guys suck tremendous amounts of blood in, every worm, every day, and they just keep sucking blood. They don't wait for a while, take a break. They just keep sucking blood. And so that is why the sheep end up with anemia, and that is what Haemonchus scoring is based on. Okay, all right. Okay, here's the symptoms. If you don't have enough blood cells in you, what do you got? All your mucous membranes, no matter where they are, if they're in your eye, or nose, or lips, or gums, they turn white, right? Okay. Marie's a nurse, she can tell us that right off the bat. Okay, that's the first sign, and that's what we're looking at when we Haemonchus score the eye, the lower eyelid is a light coloring of pink, or worse yet, white in there. If you've got a white eye lower lid, you're almost dead if you're a sheep. So we have to watch out for that. Secondly, this is a picture right here of what they call bottle jaw. It forms, I'm not too sure the physiology of it, but when sheep get bottle jaw or barber pole worm infection to an advanced state, this bottle jaw will form. So if you're around your sheep, look at their eyes, their ears, their back end for poo, and also look right under the neck here, for the presence of bottle jaw. If you've got bottle jaw, you're advancing to a stage where you're going downhill fast. You're a sheep. So bottle jaw is not a good thing to see. Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead. Okay, we're just going to briefly touch on other internal parasite worms. The bottle jaw and the biggest family of worms are called roundworms or strongyles, and they all have very direct life cycles. They all involve the sheep itself and maybe grass. Okay, it's not like there's a ton of parasites that use 2 different hosts like cattle, sheep, somebody else, and their life cycles are very complicated. We're lucky with the barber pole worm that it's a very simple life cycle, and we can kind of use that simplicity for our advantage. The symptoms here are that bottle jaw. This slide says scouring. We found that that's not necessarily true. You can have a pooey-butted ewe, and she doesn't have barber pole worm infection. So I believe for 3 or 4 years that all these pooey-butted ewes that I had barber pole infection, and then I learned how to Haemonchus score, and I found out that half of them, that wasn't their problem. Okay, there's other worms. There's Trichostrongylis, Ostratasia, and Hematogyrus. All those are not very important for sheep. They're there, and there's certain times in the year that they might give us problems, but for the most part, we need to focus on the barber pole worm, and if we get that guy taken care of, then we can look at the others. Okay, the next thing we need to kind of paint the picture with is what kind of sheep are most susceptible. And obviously, the ones that are very susceptible are the ones that are under stress, any kind of stress. So that includes a ewe that's milking heavily, a lamb that's weaned, and those are the 2 main things. So if you're going to have, like if you haven't weaned yet and you're losing ewes like Bobby, probably those ewes are your best milkers. They got twins on them, maybe triplets on them, and those lambs are doing great and they're sucking that ewe dry. Okay, so that puts her in a physiological, stressful situation, and lends her to the Barber Pole Worm really a lot easier. Lambs, when you wean them, that is a stressful situation for a lamb. How many people have weaned lambs? Okay.
Or this year?
Anytime. Yeah, okay? It's the volley back and forth, right, between the baths. Okay? For every bath that lamb emits, you might as well just figure 10 tons of stress on that lamb, okay? You know, I didn't used to, I'm a man, I thought, they can handle it. You know, we found out a lot different. If you reduce that stress at weaning, you have a lot less problems with Barber Pole Worm, and we'll talk more about that. Okay, so the least susceptible ones are your dry ewes, your wethers, to an extent your rams. These guys are freeloaders. Okay, they're not really, they're just kind of cruising along, you know, and so they can handle the Barber Pole Worm a lot better than a ewe that's really working hard for you, or a lamb that's being weaned. Okay, next please. Okay, yeah, here we go. This is key right here, is the life cycle of the Barber Pole Worm. And we can use this life cycle to manage for the Barber Pole Worm. Okay, when they start right here, the ewe ingests them, and right away those worms that are adult worms, they start producing eggs in the grazing season. And so those eggs will come out in the fecal pellets, you know, as the grass passes through her. And then this right here is really key. It takes 4 to 9 days for the eggs to hatch into larvae and crawl out onto the grass. And it's closer to 4 days than it is to 9. Okay, so I always use 4 because I want to err on the conservative side. So in 4 days, they've gone from the poop pellet on the ground about a foot or so over to where the grass is growing, and they crawl up. And they may not stay on the grass. If it's really hot, they might migrate down into the soil where it's shadier, but when it warms up, you know, the next day, they'll go up 2 to 3 inches above the ground again. Okay?
So if they migrate down to the soil, how long do they survive down there?
They survive for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah. The hotter it is, the least time it takes them to survive. But that's another key point, because in Montana we think, it's 20 below in the winter, they're never going to survive that. Well, I've got proof on our farm that they do survive 20 below with very little snow. Okay? They have, each little L3 larvae is the infective larvae stage. They go through about 4 stages of larvae, and the third one, they go through 1, 2, and 3 in the pellet. And the pellet, the L3 larvae, you might say, gives them the ability to motate, and so they move around. And they only move through moisture. They don't have legs, but they can swim. And so, you know, they just use the moisture to get onto the leaves. They don't take very much moisture. Dew is plenty good enough. Okay, so this is key right here, 4 days. Then it takes them about 18 days, once they're ingested, to go from the L3 stage to an adult inside the ewe. Okay, so they're really, they're outside. They can be outside for months if it's cool, like 30 to 40 degrees. And each L3 larvae has so many wiggles. It doesn't eat anything. It has fat stored up, and it wiggles. It's constantly wiggling. And the higher the temperature, the more it wiggles. So if you've got X number of wiggles in you and you're an L3 larvae, if it's warm out, you're just going like this, and you might last 35 days only, and then you're done. But if you've got the same X number of wiggles and it's like 40 degrees out or 50 degrees out, you're just kind of going slower, and it's going to take you maybe 3 or 4 months before your last wiggle. Okay, so that's how it works. So they can be out on your pasture for a long time. Once they get into the ewe or the lamb, they live about 6 to 8 months inside that ewe. So that tells us another really key point. In the fall, if that ewe eats the Barber Pole worms, she's going to have them in her abomasum for 6 to 8 months. So, perfect overwintering strategy, right? That ewe, when she goes out in the spring again, she has the capability of throwing all these L3 larvae or eggs out in the pasture again. Okay? All right, next please. Okay, which brings us to the next little great strategy that the barber pole worm has. It can somehow go into hyperbiosis, or let's just call it hibernate. It can hibernate in the fall, starting in the fall, in the abomasum in the ewe, and it just kind of goes into a steady state. It doesn't use very much energy. It doesn't suck a whole lot of blood out of her. It just stays there. Okay? And then, when that ewe gets set to lamb, physiological changes in that ewe take place, and somehow the barber pole worm keys on them, and it starts producing lots of eggs. Because it knows, to be anthropomorphic, it knows through eons and eons of ecological stimuluses that ewe, when she lambs, she's going to go out on grass. And then it's the barber pole worm's time to get its act together and throw out a whole bunch of eggs. Okay? So this whole thing is called periparturient rise, and it's a key to managing the barber pole worm. Case in point, 2 years ago, we Haemonchus scored all of our ewes 3 weeks after lambing, just before we put them out to pasture, and we only had like, I think it was 12 or 13 out of 200 ewes that were Haemonchus scored 3, which is right in the middle of the scoring system. And so we dewormed those and we let everybody go, and we didn't have ewes die that year, a month later. This year, since we only had 12, I thought, well, we got to get out to grass soon, and it's going to take us 3 or 4 hours to go through all those ewes, so we're not going to do that this year.